The wound and the wolves. Alina moved through the forest as if it were the only place left that understood her silence. The branches above swayed, filtering thin streams of fading sunlight across her face. But she kept her gaze low, her steps careful. Her body carried an old scar, a line etched across her shoulder from a carriage accident years ago, yet the deeper wound was invisible, the one carved inside her heart by betrayal. She was Arman's wife, but in name only. The man she had once trusted to guard her happiness had grown distant, his affections scattered elsewhere. His wealth gave him power, his charm gave him admirers, and Alina became little more than a shadow in his house. Rumors of other women reached her often, whispered by servants or carried on the careless lips of strangers. Each rumor was a knife she learned to absorb without flinching, for no one seemed to expect her pain to matter. It was not Arman's cruelty that stung her most, but his indifference. He did not fight, nor rage, nor confess. He simply dismissed her existence. She was a ghost at his table, a forgotten companion in his bed. In the eyes of society, she was the dutiful wife of a respected man. In truth, she was an exile in her own home. The wolves came when night fell. She had first seen them after wandering deep into the woods, trying to outwalk her thoughts. Their eyes glimmered in the dark, fierce yet oddly familiar. Instead of running, she stood her ground, and something passed between them, a strange understanding. They did not attack. They circled, they watched, they howled, and then they vanished. From that night onward, they appeared whenever she slipped into the trees. Alina came to think of them as companions, not predators. Perhaps, she thought, they recognized a fellow survivor. Her nights were filled with the echo of their howls, blending with the silence of her chambers. She told no one about them. It was the only secret she owned, something untainted by Arman's neglect. One evening, she returned home to find Arman seated in the study, his expression calm, his voice clipped. He spoke of a business trip, of duties that would keep him away for weeks. He did not ask her opinion, nor offer reassurance. He never did. Alina nodded as expected, though inside she felt a spark of relief. His absence meant freedom to breathe without the heavy weight of pretense. Yet even in his absence, loneliness lingered like smoke. She wandered more often, her steps carrying her deeper into the forest. She would pause beneath tall pines, close her eyes, and let the sound of rustling leaves fill the emptiness inside. Sometimes she spoke aloud to the wolves, her words pouring out into the night, as if their unseen presence could absorb her confessions. "I am not weak," she whispered once, her breath trembling in the chill air. "I'm still here. I'm still alive." The wolves answered with a low chorus, and for the first time in months, she felt heard. Still, her wound ached. It was not healing, it was festering. Loneliness had hardened her, but it had also made her vulnerable. She longed for someone to look at her, truly look, and see more than a shadow. Unbeknownst to her, she was no longer alone in the woods. Far beyond the tree line, a pair of eyes had begun to follow her trail. Not the eyes of a wolf, but of a man, a stranger whose curiosity was stirred by the sight of a woman wandering where few dared to tread. Each evening, he kept his distance, his footsteps masked by the murmur of leaves. He studied the way she carried herself, graceful yet heavy with sorrow, and he wondered what pain had driven her so deep into solitude. Alina did not sense him yet. To her, the forest was hers alone, a place untouchable by betrayal. But the tracks she left behind, light prints on soil, broken twigs, brushed grass, were enough to guide him closer with each passing night. The forest, once her only refuge, had gained a new presence, one that would soon alter the rhythm of her survival, one that would challenge the balance she had built between silence and endurance. As the last light sank beyond the horizon, the wolves howled again, their cries echoing like warnings across the trees. Alina raised her head, listening, her heart tightening with the familiar mixture of fear and comfort. What she did not know was that this time, the howls were not for her alone. They carried into the ears of the stranger who followed her tracks, an unseen witness to her sorrow, and the one destined to unravel her fragile world. The stranger who followed. The first time Alina sensed him, she thought it was only the wind. A hush in the trees, a pause between the forest's natural rhythms, made her glance over her shoulder. The wolves were not near. Their eyes usually glimmered when they circled her, yet that night, the shadows felt different. She walked faster, clutching her shawl, the scar on her shoulder aching as it always did in the cold. But the sensation of being observed clung to her skin. When she reached the stream and bent to drink, the rippling water reflected only her own pale face. Still, she whispered into the dark, "Who's there?" The silence held. Then came the faint crack of a branch. Daniel had not meant to reveal himself. For weeks, he had traced her path quietly, fascinated not by beauty alone, but by the gravity of her solitude. Something about the woman stirred questions he could not dismiss. Why did she walk alone at night? Why did wolves linger near her without harm? Why did sorrow hang about her like a second garment? That night, his hesitation betrayed him. Stepping into the open, he raised his hands as if to show he meant no harm. "I didn't mean to frighten you," he said, his voice low, steady. Alina's breath caught. A man, not Arman, not anyone from the village, but a stranger, tall, rugged from travel, with eyes that carried both caution and curiosity. Instinct urged her to flee, yet something anchored her feet to the earth. "Why are you here?" she asked, her tone sharp to mask her unease. "I've watched you," Daniel admitted, though carefully. "You walk these woods alone, and I wondered why." Alina's first impulse was anger. To be watched, to be followed, reminded her of her vulnerability. Yet beneath the anger was something else, relief. Someone had noticed her. Someone had cared enough to wonder. "You should not follow women in the dark," she said, her voice colder than her eyes. Daniel inclined his head. "You're right. Forgive me. But solitude leaves a trail, and yours was impossible to ignore." His words unsettled her, not because they were threatening, but because they carried truth. She was a trail of solitude, each step echoing her isolation. For a moment they stood in silence, the forest breathing around them. Then the wolves howled, distant yet distinct. Alina's gaze flickered toward the sound, then back to him. To her surprise, Daniel did not flinch. "You don't fear them?" she asked. "Fear keeps most alive," he said with a faint smile. "But sometimes fear blinds. Wolves are survivors, like people. They know who belongs and who doesn't." Alina felt a strange shiver. His presence unsettled her carefully built defenses. She had survived Arman's neglect by folding herself into silence, by believing no one saw her. But this man's words cracked that silence. "I belong here," she said softly, half to herself. "And yet," Daniel replied, "you look like someone searching for a way out." His observation struck her like a hidden arrow. She did not answer, not immediately. Instead, she turned back toward the path leading home. "You should not follow me again," she told him, though the firmness in her voice trembled. "I will respect your wish," he said, though his eyes lingered. "But if I cross your path again, it will not be by accident." She walked away, her steps quick, her mind a storm. Every instinct told her to guard her heart, to remember the betrayal that had already shattered her. And yet, as the wolves' howls rose again, she felt a flicker of warmth where only cold had lived. For nights afterward, she told herself she would not return to the stream. Yet she did. Each time, she half hoped and half feared the stranger would appear again. His words replayed in her thoughts, tugging at the raw edges of her wound. Daniel, for his part, kept his promise. He did not intrude openly, but he remained near enough to watch, drawn not by pity but by recognition. He too bore scars of betrayal, though his remained hidden. Something about her sorrow mirrored his own, and he could not walk away. When their paths finally crossed again, it was not by chance. The forbidden bond. Alina told herself she would resist. After their first meeting, she vowed never to look for the stranger again. Yet the forest betrayed her resolve. Each time she stepped beneath its canopy, the memory of his eyes returned, steady, unafraid, filled with the kind of attention she had long forgotten. It was on the third night that Daniel appeared once more. He did not emerge suddenly, but walked toward her openly, as if he had been waiting all along. Alina's breath faltered, her hands clenching at her sides, yet she did not move away. "You came back," he said. "You said you would not follow me," she answered. "I didn't," Daniel replied. "I waited." Something in his tone softened her guard. He did not corner her, did not press. He simply stood there, as though he would accept her choice if she turned and walked away. For reasons she could not explain, she stayed. They began to speak in fragments at first. Alina revealed little. Her marriage remained a shadow she did not name. But her silence carried truths Daniel could hear. He spoke of travels, of villages left behind, of battles fought within himself. He told her nothing of permanence, only of passing through. Yet his words carried more substance than anything she had heard from Arman in years. Night after night, she found herself returning. Their conversations deepened, weaving threads of trust where there should have been none. Daniel listened with a patience that unsettled her. He noticed the way she touched her scar when she spoke of pain, the way her voice faltered when silence grew too long. For the first time in years, Alina felt visible. But visibility was dangerous. One evening, rain began to fall, light at first, then pouring. Alina should have fled home, yet she lingered beneath the trees, her dress heavy, her hair clinging to her face. Daniel was already there, waiting. He stepped closer, his hands steady, his eyes searching hers. "You shouldn't be out here," he said. "Neither should you," she replied, though her voice was softer than she intended. The air thickened. The forest, usually alive with rustling, seemed to hold its breath. Even the wolves, gathered at a distance, watched in silence. Daniel reached out, brushing a strand of wet hair from her face. The touch was light, tentative, but it sent a tremor through her. She should have pulled back. She should have remembered Arman, her vows, her duty. Instead, she stood frozen, aching for more. "Alina," Daniel whispered, as if saying her name for the first time gave it meaning. Her lips parted with a truth she did not want to admit. "I am not free." "Nor am I," he said. "But neither of us deserves to be bound by sorrow." The next moment unfolded, as though chosen by the rain itself. Their lips met, hesitant at first, then with a hunger that years of silence had starved. The kiss was fire against the cold, forbidden yet undeniable. When they parted, Alina's chest rose and fell in sharp breaths. She looked toward the wolves, who had begun to howl, their cries cutting through the storm like judgment. "We shouldn't," she said, her voice breaking. "No," Daniel agreed, his forehead resting against hers. "But we already have." The guilt came swiftly, sharp as a blade. Yet beneath it burned a dangerous relief. For once, she was not invisible. For once, she belonged to more than shadows. In the days that followed, secrecy bound them closer. They met in hidden clearings by the stream beneath the veil of night. Words turned to touches, touches to embraces, until restraint dissolved. Alina knew each step was a betrayal, yet each step also reminded her she was alive. Still, the wolves never stopped watching. Their eyes gleamed in the dark, their howls echoing as though they carried her conscience into the sky. She could not escape their witness, nor the echo of her own heart warning of the storm ahead. One night, after Daniel left her with a lingering touch, Alina stood alone, drenched in moonlight. Her pulse raced with both exhilaration and dread. She whispered into the air, as if the wolf could answer, "What have I done?" The forest gave no reply, only the distant howl of her silent judges. Alina turned back toward home, each step heavier than the last. She knew the danger was no longer whether she would yield to temptation. She already had. The danger now was how long she could hide the truth before her tracks were uncovered. Tracks revealed. Arman's return was earlier than expected. Alina had grown accustomed to his long absences, the way he drifted in and out of her life like a shadow that never touched the ground. But this time, he came home without warning, his eyes sharp, his questions sharper still. "You've been walking more often," he remarked one evening, his voice casual but his gaze unyielding. Alina froze, her cup trembling in her hand. She forced a smile, rehearsed from years of masking truth. The forest calms me. Arman said nothing more, yet his silence pressed against her like a blade. For the first time, she feared him, not for violence, but for the precision of his suspicion. That night, she lay awake, listening to his even breathing beside her. Guilt gnawed at her ribs. She thought of Daniel, of the warmth she had stolen, of the wolves whose howls seemed louder each evening. She wanted to believe her secret could remain hidden, but the tracks of betrayal were carved deeper than she realized. Days later, Arman followed her. Alina sensed it before she saw him. The way the forest felt heavier, less forgiving. Daniel was waiting by the stream, his expression softening the moment their eyes met. Relief swept through her, until movement in the trees broke the illusion. Arman stepped forward, his cloak catching the light, his face carved from stone. His eyes moved from Alina to Daniel, then back again, the silence between them more terrible than any shouted accusation. "So," Arman said at last, his tone flat, "this is how you fill my absence." Alina's throat closed. Words tangled and died. Daniel moved instinctively closer, but she lifted a hand to stop him. The betrayal was hers to bear. "You left me long before I left you," she whispered. Arman's lips curled, not in anger but in scorn. "I left you nothing but a name, and still you found a way to disgrace it." The wolves appeared then, their eyes glowing at the edge of the clearing. They did not approach, but their presence sharpened the air. It was as though the forest itself had gathered to witness judgment. Daniel finally spoke. "She deserves more than silence and neglect." Arman's gaze turned on him, cold and unyielding. "And you believe you can give it?" A wanderer with nothing but borrowed words. Daniel did not flinch. Better words than chains. Alina stood between them, her heart tearing in two directions. She saw the hypocrisy in Arman's stance. His affairs had never been hidden well. Yet she also saw the weight of her own betrayal, heavier because it was chosen in secret. The wolves howled, their cries slicing through the tension. Alina's breath hitched, her body trembling. She realized the truth of her wound. It was not Arman alone who had carved it, nor Daniel who had soothed it. It was her own longing to be seen, her own desperate need to belong. "I cannot be what either of you demands," she said, her voice breaking but firm. "Not a ghost for a husband's pride, nor a savior for a stranger's loneliness." The men stared at her, each holding his own silence. Alina turned toward the forest. The wolves shifted, their eyes beckoning, their howls rising. For years, they had circled her, companions of survival, witnesses of her solitude. Now, they seemed to offer something else: escape, freedom, or perhaps destruction. She stepped forward. "Alina," Daniel called, his voice urgent, aching. "Alina," Arman echoed, his tone laced with command. She did not answer either. Her steps carried her past them both, into the waiting shadows. The wolves parted as she entered, their eyes gleaming like stars against the dark. Her figure blurred among the trees, her tracks fading into soil and silence. Behind her, two men remained in the clearing, each grasping a different version of loss. Ahead of her, only the forest stretched wide, unknown and unrelenting. The howls rose higher, drowning out everything else. Whether they welcomed her as one of their own or devoured her as prey, no one could say. But Alina did not turn back. Her tracks vanished with the dawn.